German engineers thought their tanks were the best in the world until they captured a Sherman and put it to the test. What they found shocked them, a level of reliability they'd never achieved in their own designs. This is the untold story of how the Sherman earned respect from its greatest rivals, and why reliability, not just firepower, won the war. The year is 1944. The war in Europe is at its peak. On the battlefields of France and the Eastern Front, tanks are king. The German army, famous for its engineering prowess, fields the mighty Tiger and Panther, machines that strike fear into Allied crews. Their thick armor and powerful guns are the stuff of legend. But behind the lines, in a quiet test facility far from the front, a group of German engineers gathers around a different kind of tank, a captured American Sherman. The Sherman is not impressive at first glance. It's smaller than a Tiger, lighter than a Panther, and its 75mm gun is no match for the German 88. The engineers, some of the best minds in the Reich, are skeptical. They've heard stories from the front, how the Shermans burn, how they're outgunned, how they're Tommy cookers. But they're also curious. How has this tank, so often dismissed, become the backbone of the Allied advance? The engineers begin their tests. They drive the Sherman over rough ground, through mud and water, across ditches and up steep slopes. They run the engine for hours, push the transmission to its limits, and fire the gun until the barrel is hot. They strip the tank down, examine the engine, the suspension, the tracks, the radio. They compare it to their own designs, noting every difference, every shortcut, every compromise. What they find surprises them. The Sherman is not the most powerful tank they've seen. It's not the fastest, or the best armored, or the most heavily armed. But it is something else, something they have never quite achieved in their own machines. The Sherman is reliable. Day after day, the tank starts on the first try. The engine runs smoothly, even after hours of abuse. The transmission shifts without complaint. The tracks, simple and robust, rarely throw or break. The suspension, though less sophisticated than the Panther's, shrugs off bumps and rue, as the radio works every time, clear and strong. The gun, though smaller than the Tiger's, is easy to load and quick to fire. The German engineers are impressed. They admit, quietly at first, then more openly, that they have never built a tank with this level of reliability. Their own machines, for all their power and sophistication, are temperamental. The Tiger's engine is prone to overheating. The Panther's transmission is fragile. Both tanks require constant maintenance, skilled crews, and a steady supply of spare parts. In the field, a broken tank is as useless as a destroyed one. The Sherman, by contrast, is a mechanic's dream. Its engine is based on a commercial design, easy to repair and cheap to produce. Its parts are interchangeable. One Sherman's track fits another. One engine can be swapped for another in hours. The tank is designed for mass production, for quick repair, for the brutal realities of war. The engineers take notes, write reports, and send their findings up the chain of command. Some are embarrassed, others are envious. They know that their own tanks, for all their strengths, are too complex, too delicate, too expensive. They see the wisdom in the Sherman's simplicity, the genius in its robustness. One engineer, a veteran of the Panther program, writes in his diary, "We have never built reliability like this. Our tanks are thoroughbreds, fast, powerful, but high-strung. The Sherman is a workhorse. It just keeps going." The tests continue. The Germans try to break the Sherman, to find its limits. They run it through obstacle courses, fire at it with anti-tank guns, and push it harder than any Allied crew would dare. The tank takes the punishment and keeps moving. When something does break, the repair is quick and simple. The engineers are forced to admit what their soldiers have already learned. The Sherman is not the best tank in any one category, but it is the best tank for war. The news spreads quietly through the German engineering community. Some officers scoff, unwilling to believe that the Allies have outdone them in any way. Others take the lesson to heart, urging changes in German tank design, simpler engines, more interchangeable parts, easier maintenance. But it is too late. The factories are bombed, the supply lines are cut, and the war is slipping away. On the front lines, German tank crews begin to notice the difference. They see Shermans advancing in waves, even after days of hard fighting. They hear stories of American mechanics swapping engines in the field, of tanks repaired overnight and sent back into battle. They watch as their own Tigers and Panthers are abandoned, broken down for lack of parts or fuel. The Sherman's reliability becomes a weapon in itself. It allows the Allies to keep up the pressure, to exploit breakthroughs, to recover from setbacks. It means that every tank sent to the front is likely to fight, and to keep fighting until the battle is won. The German engineers, for all their pride and skill, are forced to admit defeat, not on the battlefield, but in the workshop. They have built masterpieces, but the Americans have built machines for war. The story of the captured Sherman is more than a tale of engineering. It is a story of humility, of learning from the enemy, of recognizing that the best solution is not always the most complicated. It is a story of how reliability, not just firepower or armor, can decide the fate of armies. The German engineers' reports on the Sherman tank made their way up the chain of command, sparking debate and even a sense of quiet envy among the Reich's top designers. In the workshops and design bureaus of Germany, the Tiger and Panther were still seen as the pinnacle of armored warfare, machines that embodied the nation's engineering pride. But the reality on the battlefield was different. For every Tiger that rolled off the assembly line, dozens of Shermans were being produced in America, shipped across the Atlantic, and thrown into the fight. The engineers who had tested the captured Sherman began to speak more openly about what they had found. They noted how the Sherman's engine, a simple and robust design adapted from commercial vehicles, could run for hundreds of hours with minimal maintenance. They admired the tank's transmission, which shifted smoothly and rarely failed, even under the stress of combat. They were impressed by the ease with which the crew could access and replace parts. No need for specialized tools or weeks in a repair depot. Everything about the Sherman was designed for speed, efficiency, and reliability. One German mechanic, after working on the captured tank, remarked to his colleagues, "If we had tanks like this, we could keep fighting for weeks without waiting for spare parts." Another engineer, tasked with maintaining a Panther battalion, confessed, "Our tanks are beautiful, but they are like racehorses, always in need of care. The Sherman is a mule, it just keeps going." The contrast was stark. German tanks were marvels of engineering, but they were also plagued by problems. The Tiger's Maybach engine was powerful, but prone to overheating and breakdowns. The Panther's complex suspension and transmission often failed in rough terrain. Both tanks required highly trained crews and constant attention from skilled mechanics. In the mud and the chaos of the Eastern Front or the bocage of Normandy, a single mechanical failure could mean the loss of a tank, and sometimes an entire crew. The Sherman, by comparison, was forgiving. Its radial engine could run on low-octane fuel. Its tracks and suspension were simple and rugged. Its parts were standardized, so a broken tank could be cannibalized to repair another. American logistics ensured that spare parts, fuel and ammunition were always close at hand. The result was a tank that was almost always available for action, while German tanks often sat idle, waiting for repairs that might never come. The German engineers' admiration for the Sherman was not limited to its mechanics. They also noted the tank's radio system, which allowed American crews to communicate quickly and effectively. In German tanks, only the commander's vehicle was usually equipped with a radio, and even then, the equipment was often unreliable. The Sherman's radio network gave Allied units a tactical edge, allowing them to coordinate attacks, call for support, and respond to threats in real time. As the war dragged on, the lessons of the Sherman became impossible to ignore. German officers began to request simpler, more reliable tanks, but the demands of the high command and the chaos of the war made change difficult. Factories were bombed, resources were scarce, and the pressure to produce ever more powerful weapons led to even greater complexity. The Panther and Tiger II, introduced late in the war, were formidable on paper, but plagued by the same problems as their predecessors: too heavy, too complex, too fragile for the realities of total war. On the Allied side, the Sherman's reputation grew. Tank crews trusted their machines, knowing that even if they took a hit or broke down, help was never far away. Mechanics worked miracles in the field, swapping engines and transmissions in hours, not days. The Sherman's reliability allowed the Allies to keep up the pressure, launching attack after attack, never giving the enemy time to recover. The German engineers who had tested the captured Sherman continued to share their findings, even as the war turned against them. Some wrote detailed reports, hoping that their insights would be used to improve German designs. Others simply shook their heads, marveling at the simplicity and effectiveness of the American tank. In private conversations, they admitted what they could not say in public. The Sherman was not the best tank in the world, but it was the best tank for the war they were fighting. The story of the captured Sherman became a legend among Allied tankers. They took pride in the knowledge that their enemies respected, and even envied, their machines. The Sherman's reliability became a point of pride, a symbol of American ingenuity and determination. It was not the most glamorous tank, nor the most powerful, but it was the one that got the job done. As the Allies advanced into Germany, the lessons of the Sherman were clear for all to see. The roads and fields were littered with broken Panthers and Tigers, abandoned for lack of fuel or spare parts. The Shermans, battered and scarred, kept rolling forward, carrying their crews to victory. The German engineers, for all their skill and pride, had to admit defeat, not in the design office, but on the battlefield. The Sherman had proven that reliability, simplicity, and mass production could win a war. It was a lesson that would shape the future of armored warfare for decades to come. As the Allies pressed deeper into occupied Europe, the contrast between German and American armor became even more apparent. On the roads to Paris, through the forests of the Ardennes, and across the battered bridges of the Rhine, the Sherman's reliability was on full display. Tank columns advanced for days at a time, pausing only for fuel and ammunition. When a Sherman broke down, it was often back in action within hours, repaired on the roadside by mechanics with a crate of spare parts and a set of wrenches. German tank crews, meanwhile, faced a different reality. The mighty Tiger and Panther, so feared in open battle, were often left behind. Their engines overheated, their transmissions failed, and their weight made them prone to bogging down in mud or snow. In the chaos of retreat, German crews sometimes destroyed their own tanks rather than let them fall into Allied hands. The sight of abandoned Panthers and Tigers became a common one, a silent testament to the limits of over-engineering. The German engineers who had tested the Sherman watched these developments with a mix of frustration and reluctant admiration. They saw how the Americans kept their tanks moving, how they adapted to setbacks, and how their logistics kept the front supplied. The Sherman's design philosophy, favoring ease of use, repairability, and mass production, was proving itself in the harshest test imaginable. Reports from the front lines filtered back to the German high command. Officers described how American tank units could recover from losses quickly, how damaged Shermans were towed to the rear, patched up, and sent back into battle. In contrast, a single mechanical failure could sideline a German tank for days or weeks, if it could be repaired at all. The difference was not just in the machines, but in the entire system that supported them. The engineers' respect for the Sherman grew as they learned more about its design. They noted the use of standardized parts, the modular construction, and the emphasis on crew safety and comfort. The Sherman's hatches were large and easy to open, allowing crews to escape quickly if the tank was hit. Its fire suppression system, though simple, saved lives. Even the tank's relatively high profile, often criticized by Allied crews, made it easier to spot and recover damaged vehicles. In private, some German engineers began to question the direction of their own tank programs. They wondered if the pursuit of ever more powerful guns and thicker armor had come at too high a cost. They debated whether a simpler, more reliable tank, produced in greater numbers, might have served Germany better than the handful of Wunderwaffe that so often broke down before reaching the battlefield. The Sherman's reputation even reached the ears of German tank crews. Some Panther and Tiger commanders, after capturing or examining a Sherman, expressed grudging respect for its practicality. They envied the ease with which American crews could maintain their tanks, the abundance of spare parts, and the support of dedicated recovery teams. In the final months of the war, some German units even pressed captured Shermans into service, preferring their reliability to the uncertainty of their own vehicles. For the Americans, the praise from their adversaries was both surprising and gratifying. Tank crews who had once envied the firepower of the Tiger or the sleek lines of the Panther now took pride in their own machines. They knew that the Sherman was not perfect, but it was the tank that brought them home. The story of the captured Sherman became a favorite among Allied mechanics and engineers. It was told and retold in workshops and mess halls, a reminder that the best weapon is the one that works when you need it most. The lesson was clear. In war, reliability is not a luxury, it is a necessity. As the war drew to a close, the German engineers who had tested the Sherman reflected on what they had learned. Some would go on to work in the post-war automotive and defense industries, bringing with them a new appreciation for simplicity and reliability. The lessons of the Sherman would influence tank design for decades, shaping the next generation of armored vehicles on both sides of the Iron Curtain. The Sherman's legacy was secure. It had earned the respect of friend and foe alike, not through raw power or cutting-edge technology, but through the quiet, relentless reliability that kept it moving forward, no matter the odds. The war ended, but the lessons of the captured Sherman tank echoed through the decades that followed. In post-war Germany, engineers who had once tested Allied vehicles found themselves rebuilding a nation, and in some cases, designing the next generation of tanks for NATO and the Bundeswehr. The experience of the Sherman left a mark. Simplicity, reliability, and ease of maintenance became guiding principles for new designs, replacing the obsession with complexity that had defined the Tiger and Panther era. In the United States, the Sherman's reputation only grew. Veterans spoke with pride about the tank that had carried them from Normandy to the heart of Germany. Mechanics remembered how quickly they could swap an engine or repair a track. Commanders praised the way their units could keep moving, even under the most difficult conditions. The Sherman became a symbol of American ingenuity, a machine that worked not just in theory, but in the mud, snow, and chaos of real war. Historians and military analysts studied the reports from German engineers, fascinated by the unexpected praise. The story of the captured Sherman became a case study in military academies, a lesson in the value of reliability over raw power. The tank's design philosophy, favoring mass production, standardized parts, and field repairability, was credited with helping the Allies win a war of attrition. The Sherman's influence could be seen in tanks around the world. The Soviet T-34, itself a model of rugged simplicity, had already shown the value of reliability on the Eastern Front. But the Sherman's success in Western Europe reinforced the lesson. A tank that can be built quickly, repaired easily, and kept in the fight is worth more than a handful of temperamental giants. For the German engineers who had once dismissed the Sherman, the memory of their tests lingered. Some wrote memoirs reflecting on the mistakes of the past. They admitted that their pursuit of technical perfection had blinded them to the realities of war. They acknowledged that the Sherman, for all its flaws, had achieved something they never had. It was always there when it was needed. The story of the captured Sherman is more than a tale of machines. It is a story of humility, of learning from the enemy, and of the quiet power of reliability. It is a reminder that the best weapon is not always the most powerful, but the one that works, every time, for every crew, in every battle. Today, restored Shermans roll in parades and sit in museums, their engines still rumbling to life after 80 years. Visitors marvel at their simplicity, their rugged lines, and the stories they carry. The legend of the Sherman endures, not just as a weapon of war, but as a symbol of what can be achieved when engineers and soldiers work together to solve the real problems of the battlefield. The German engineers' admission, "We never built reliability like this," stands as a tribute to the men and women who designed, built, and fought in the Sherman. It is a lesson for every generation. In war, as in life, reliability wins respect, and sometimes it wins the war itself.